are you all doing? Good. Are you ready to fight? Yeah. Are you ready to win? Yeah. All right, I'm glad to hear that. She mentioned May Day. May Day didn't get a lot of coverage, did it? No. Before May Day, we had 2 weeks of groping about the wedding in the UK and how the prince and his new bride were getting married. It was all over every news channel in the build up to May Day. And then after the heroic and courageous turnout that we had among workers of all nationalities in the streets on May 1st, we had the announcement that Osama bin Laden was assassinated. And again, we were distracted, many of us. I saw people on TV chanting USA, USA, and the attention was immediately shifted again away from the working struggle in the United States. And I thought about it afterward, and I thought, working people chanting USA like a moment like this is a bit like a chicken chanting KFC, KFC. And then you think about it even broader. The U.S. government finding Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. And everybody celebrating that. But where were they when they foreclosed us from our houses? Where were they when you got laid off of your job with no excuse? Where were they when you were a low-wage worker working in Chipotle in the Midwest and you had the ICE raid come through and break you up and tell you that you're an illegal, as if a human being can be illegal? Where was the government then? Where were we in the streets fighting back? So it's so important, and don't take it lightly, that you're in this room at such a moment of distraction where people around the country are looking in UK or they're looking in Pakistan and looking for enemies abroad when we have enemies right here in the United States that need to be fought with progressive action. And so what's the problem? Income inequality. Lack of good jobs, family-sustaining jobs, decline of medium-income jobs in this country, attacks on workers' collective bargaining rights, attacks on immigrants, attacks on people of color, attacks on schools and our public services. We have to focus and speak about the issues, and what it reminds me of is yesterday I was in a place called Kenosha. Kenosha is just a bit out of Illinois, and I went to a UAW, United Auto Worker Hall there, and I spoke to a person at a meeting. I was conducting a training there. And she's a retired UAW worker. She was working at Chrysler there in Kenosha. And she told me that long ago, this UAW union hall had 6,000 people who would pack it once a week. Wow. Over 1,000 of them were UAW members. Today, guess how many members are a part of UAW in Kenosha? 800. Zero. Zero. Everybody who serviced are retired UAW workers in Kenosha. That's a picture of what's wrong with this country right now. Is that the government, the banks, and the corporations for the past 40 years have been taking the wealth and resources that workers create and using it in order to break our backs, to take away our jobs, to send them to countries where they can exploit workers in the so-called third world, where they can replace us with high technologies and then leave you to solve the rest of the mess. And then they scapegoat and tell you it's the immigrant. They scapegoat and tell you it's the union. And in Wisconsin, what we saw was they put their foot on our necks and they said, you know what, we're going to keep grinding with this process. And the workers of Wisconsin said, you keep telling us about the rights we have as Americans. Well, we know the most sacred right we have as workers is the right to rebel when we're faced with oppression. And that's exactly what happened when Scott Walker continued this attack and decided he wanted to take away the collective bargaining of public sector workers. So where are we now? We've all seen the heroic images of workers in Wisconsin surrounding the state capitol, occupying the Capitol building. And we saw the images of workers from not just in Wisconsin, but around the world celebrating this. In Cairo, Egypt, signs with solidarity to the workers struggling in Wisconsin. Pizzas being ordered for the workers in Wisconsin. And what happened is that workers, not depending on any particular political party, they took the reins of the future. They said that we are going to define politics moving forward, not the politicians, not the Wall Street banks, and they stopped, literally, they stopped this bill from passing. If you think back, there was coverage, especially on MSNBC, about these heroic fabulous 14, these 14 Democrats, who left the state and they refused to be in place so that there would be no quorum and that Scott Walker couldn't vote on this bill. Now think about that for a minute. How many of you have found the Democrats to be heroic since 2008 with the bank bailouts, stopping foreclosures, getting jobs back under wrap? So what happened with these 14? What happened was that the workers, through independent working class action, direct action, they forced the Democrats to choose a side in the class struggle. They said you can't meddle in the middle anymore. You can't speak in the election campaign on behalf of unions and workers, and then the moment you get elected, you're bailing out banks and trying to figure out how you can help your Wall Street cronies get more money and corporations escape having to pay taxes. They forced the politicians to take a side. And that, sisters and brothers, despite the rhetoric we'll hear in the next 2 years about what candidate we should vote for, we should be looking towards each other and remembering what the workers in Madison taught us, is that we have to force a political crisis to get the politicians to do what we want them to do, which is to respect our rights and to respect the hard-earned gains that workers have struggled for in this country. We can never forget that. The 14 left the state because there was a political crisis, and they said, you know what? There's 100,000 people outside the Capitol. There's thousands more inside blocking the stairs, and they ain't gonna let me in here if they know I'm gonna vote for it. That's the type of political crisis we as workers need to create in this country to change the debate.